Dr. Farooq, shall we start?
Yes, Mr. Asif, we can start now.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is your host, Sayyid Asif Zaman from Alif Technologies. Welcome to our e-learning series. Okay, today's our topic is Islamic banking in Fintech era. Thanks to the Fintech revolution, the banking industry is revolving in a rapid pace. Pandemic and economic crisis have acted as a catalyst, accelerating this phenomena. Digital banking is no longer a theory. It is evolved to become a part of our everyday life. New concepts like neo banking, API banking, and open banking are finding their shortcuts to the mainstream. Traditional Islamic banking industry is also not future-proof for this phenomenon. In this webinar, world-class experts will share their ideas and discuss issues and challenges facing this industry. I will welcome our moderator today's Dr. Farooq Habib. Dr. Farooq Habib, to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Asif. Hello, everyone, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I hope that everybody can hear me and also can see me. Just would like to say a few words about Alif Technologies, the company. Alif Technologies is actually a professional firm with regional presence and global focus and representation. Our spectrum of services covers various aspects of digital business in the UAE, GCC, and all over the world. And we offer our clients a complete range of professional services, including software and digital platform development, educational courses, corporate training and workshops, consultancy and advisory, strategic research and market insights, all surrounding to the subject of Islamic finance and Fintech. And we believe that there is a huge potential and great benefits in cutting edge technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, big data, predictive analytics, quantum computing, etc., in solving real world problems for both SMEs and large organizations, and even for individuals. And bonding ourselves with our common belief, we are a group of enthusiastic people with well-diverse skills, expertise, qualifications, and experience, ready to cater our clients' needs. So aligned to our objectives and vision, we have started this webinar series, which is free. And here we actually are trying to share knowledge with our participants insights and experiences of Fintech and Islamic finance from world-class experts. And actually, this webinar series is also is basically a knowledge sharing session, because we believe that Islamic Fintech and Islamic finance both cannot thrive without a knowledgeable customer base. So this is our aim, to make our customers and participants knowledgeable about what is going on in the industry, what are the potentials, and where it is going, so that they will be able to see the potential benefits and also align their interests accordingly. So in this webinar, we are very happy and we are pleased to have our respected speakers, and I truly welcome them and highly appreciate their contribution and their time and effort which they have committed to us. And this is actually going to be a very good webinar, I believe, because of the diverse background of our speakers and also their vast experience and huge knowledge. But one thing I would I would like to request my participants about that if they have any question, they can either raise their hand so that like we will be able to allow them whenever it is possible to directly ask the question to the speakers and our panelists. So they can do so in voice and audio or message. And if they would like, they can use the Q&A section also available to them to write their question, and then inshallah we will be able to ask for the responses from our respected panelists. Second thing, if all the panelists allow me to have a little bit change in the agenda, there are actually two changes which I would like to announce. But before that, I would like to seek their permission that it would be easy for us if we first have all the presentations for 15 minutes. For example, Mr. Ari will start like around after like 6 minutes, like 3:15 UAE time. And after having like a 15 minutes presentation, then Dr. Ashraf Iqbal will start his presentation, and then Sireen will come in as the last presenter. After that, we will move to the panel discussion and also the Q&A section. If that is okay with all the panelists, then basically this is my request. So that the reason behind it is actually like and sometimes we observe that like we have questions from the participants, and they go back and forth with the panelists. So it would be easy like if all the panelists would be available in one session and answering the question of the participants, then I think that will be much more effective. So without without further ado, I would like to request Mr. Arif to start his presentation. Let me introduce Mr. Arif to you. Um, um, so Mr. Arif Siddiqui is the founder and CEO of Kestrel, a UK-based company that aims at providing fintech solutions to make it easy for Muslims to budget, save, and invest according to their religious and ethical values. Before starting Kestrel, he pursued a career in management consulting, working for the likes of Deloitte and PwC, where he helped banks and wealth managers develop fintech strategies and digital transformation. He completed an MBA from University of Cambridge. Also, he has done blockchain strategy program from the University of Oxford, and also completed a bachelor in physics from UCL. So this is basically a very solid background of education and also a vast experience with the Big Four, and Arib is carrying with him. So I would like to basically invite Arib now to start his presentation. Arib, over to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dr. Farouk. Really good to be here. Before I begin, is it possible for me to share my screen? When I
yes.
try, it says host is disabled. I'd also like to turn on my video, but that's also disabled at the moment, I think.
Oh, okay. Let me just ask.
No problem.
Mr. Asif, sorry for that.
It's okay.
Yeah, you can
Now,
Okay,
share.
great.
You
I
can
think you
share.
can
I think
see
we
me
are
now.
okay now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Oh, and in terms of sharing the screen, sorry, I'm logged in through two devices. There's a separate account for me. If someone could allow that to share screen.
No problem. I will ask Mr. Asif to allow also the other Arib's account to become the co-host.
Sorry, everyone. I assure you it's worth the wait, hopefully.
By which name is the other account?
Arib Siddiqui as well.
There are two accounts. Number one is Arib, which is already a co-host. And there is another account, Arib Siddiqui.
It's
which
not
is,
showing in the list.
it is in the panelist.
It's
It is
in
in the
panelists,
panelist.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you for the very warm introduction, Dr. Farouk. And yeah, literally couldn't have said it better myself. So my section is all about Islamic digital banking. And what I would like to share with all of you today is sort of my experience the past year in setting up Kestrel, founding it here in the UK and appealing to British Muslims with our section. So Kestrel is something which is able to download on Google Play and the App Store in the UK today. And we are also part of the University of Cambridge and the CMS Legal Accelerator programs as a startup. So in terms of the introduction, Dr. Farouk basically did the honors, but hi, assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Arif Siddiqui, the founder and CEO of Kestrel. Before this, I spent my career in management consulting with the likes of PwC and Deloitte, and I also completed my MBA over a year ago with the University of Cambridge, which is where I met my co-founder, and together we came up with the idea for what is Kestrel today. So without further ado, what is Kestrel? Kestrel is a mobile app that makes it easy for people to budget, save, and invest in line with their personal values. Our vision as a company is to help people to achieve their financial goals in life, whether that's saving for a house, a car, or simply for retirement, with the things that matter the most to them in life. For many of our users, which are British Muslims, that means their religious values, avoiding interest, and also other detrimental activities which are haram or forbidden. But for many of our users as well, who may not be specifically Muslim, that means more environmentally friendly type objectives, more ESG type initiatives, things which are more in line with ethical finance as opposed to solely just Islamic. So financial goals, personal values to make a real and noticeable impact on the world around them for the better. That is what our vision has been. So before starting off on what is Islamic digital banking, it is worth talking about what is digital banking in the first place. Many people often say that a digital bank is simply a debit card which is linked to an app on your phone. However, at Kestrel, we see that as a little bit reductionist. In our own sort of definition, we see it as digital banking is really anything that uses technology to disrupt the conventional banking business model. Now, when we're talking about the conventional banking business model, we're really talking about fractional reserve banking. For those of you who don't know, fractional reserve banking model is really the idea of using customer deposits, whether it's current accounts with banks or also savings accounts, to basically provide people with credit, mortgages, savings, mortgages, car loans, etc., that kind of financing, and then charging interest when you give out those sorts of loans. That is how the majority of banks in the world actually make money. And well, the way we see digital banking is anything which looks to disrupt that model in any way. So it therefore stands to reason that Islamic digital banking is anything that uses technology to disrupt the way in which Islamic banking is done today in Islamic banking models. It's also worth talking about what is a bank. And at Kestrel, we really define it as taking it back to three principles of banking. So number one, a bank should be a place where you're able to store money securely in a deposit. Number two, a bank is a place where you're able to move money from place to place quite easily, whether it's accessing it through a debit card or withdrawing money or depositing money through the bank or through a cash machine or an ATM. But finally, and something which is probably most important for people with a bank is that it is a way of accessing credit, whether it's getting a mortgage for a house or a car loan or a business loan. That is something, a role which banks have played for many people, for centuries. It's a way of helping people to live beyond their means. So digital banking is anything which uses technology to help banks basically fulfill these three core principles, which have really remained unchanged since the banking business model was sort of set centuries ago. So Islamic digital banking is anything which helps the Islamic banking model to pursue. And essentially, there has been a huge rise in Islamic digital banks in the past couple of years. These are some of the main areas we're seeing them. However, there are many others which are popping up, some of them which are a little bit under the radar and a little bit covert at the moment. But these are some of the main ones. So in the UK, we're definitely seeing the largest group of them coming up. Ourselves, Kestrel. We've also got My Ahmed, Nia, Rizq, just to name a few. In Germany, we have Insha. Insha is backed by Al Baraka Turk, which is in Turkey, and they've launched targeting the primarily Turkish German Muslims, which exist in Germany. Manzil, which is doing very well in Canada. And finally, Tayyib is one of the main ones in the UAE. I think a little bit earlier at the stage of development, but they exist, headquartered in Dubai. But this is basically what we're looking at. And honestly, I'm not exaggerating when every other week, I wouldn't be surprised if a new name is popping up within this space. So obviously, we're seeing a lot of activity happening in the UK. Why is that? Primarily, we think it's because that we have a very innovative regulator in the form of the Financial Conduct Authority here in the UK, which makes it very easy for firms to actually set up and brand themselves as a digital bank. It's in terms of the licenses that are required. This is a tried and tested model by many digital banks that have come before and are set up in the UK. The likes of Monzo, Revolut, Atom Bank, N26, when they moved from Germany to here, they've all taken advantage of the regulatory regime here, whereby rather than going for a full-fledged banking model, they all begin by going for something called an electronic money license. An electronic money license basically allows you to store money in a partner bank, or your client's money in a partner bank, a Barclays or an HSBC, and then basically to allow your users to access that money with a debit card. So you're basically ticking two of the three core principles, which is the store of value and also moving money from A to B. And that's something, that debit card linked to an app is something that's quite easy to get up and running. However, it is quite expensive. In the UK, that's quite easily facilitated. So that's why we're seeing such a big rise here in the UK. So that's that in terms of what's going on there. But however, I think the easiest way of explaining, I suppose, some of the issues and also some of the customer desires within the space is probably to tell you a little bit about Kestrel's story and how we got started and some of the challenges that we face, as well as some of the successes. So this is a picture of a very smiley me and my co-founder, Daing Termizi, when we were studying together at the University of Cambridge for our MBAs. And the reason we came up with the idea for Kestrel is that the two of us faced a very common dilemma. Why was it that as practicing Muslims in the UK, it was so difficult for us to achieve our financial goals in life, whether it was buying a house or trying to save up enough money to start a family or looking for a Sharia compliant investment? Why was it so difficult for us to do that in a way that was compliant with our religious values of avoiding interest and also certain bad detrimental activities such as gambling, alcohol, debt, explicit content, etc.? The few solutions that exist within the UK and still do exist are quite difficult to access because they're not digital in any way, shape, or form. If they do have access to it, it's very clunky. It feels like we are foregoing a certain level of functionality when we're banking with an Islamic bank as opposed to a conventional bank. Also, there's an affordability issue, whereas Islamic products tend to be quite a bit more expensive than conventional products. For example, if we're looking at mortgages, which takes them out of the price point of the majority of Muslims in the UK. So Daing and I together, as our summer research project at Cambridge, we launched a nationwide survey of Muslims' banking habits to try and understand where Muslims were banking, was it with Islamic banks, and what were the main problems they were experiencing. And the problems which we found, the results of that were very, very surprising. We built up a picture of the typical British Muslim and the issues that they were experiencing. So this is one of our typical users. We call him Ali. He's 25 years old, a British Pakistani, born here. His parents were from Pakistan. He's living at home with his parents at the moment. He is single and he is an accountant living and working in London on a pretty good salary. And the most important thing about Ali is that he is a practicing Muslim. Ali is very clear on what he wants out of life. He wants to save up for a car, a house, and to get married. However, all the other questions about Ali are up in the air. How he's going to achieve those goals without having to forgo his religious values and avoid interest is very difficult for him to know. For him to grow his wealth passively is quite difficult. And he's not really sure where to invest or how to invest. And in terms of Islamic savings accounts, those that are available, it's very difficult for him to access them through an app and to do it conveniently. When he's going to get there is similarly difficult for him to plan. He's very poor at planning goals, which are more than 2 years in advance. And his responsibilities are changing continuously. He can't really afford anything like a financial advisor, which can help him to plan out his financial goals in that way. But the biggest problem for people like Ali is where. Where do they find solutions that match their personal values, whether it's investments or savings accounts, and they're not really aware of where to find them. The two key insights that we found from our survey was, number one, Muslims in the UK were not using Islamic solutions, but the reason for that was surprising. It was actually because of lack of awareness. Most people had heard of the big Islamic bank in the UK today, which is Al Rayan. However, all the others that exist, there are 4 other Islamic banks, as well as a whole litany of Islamic fintechs and investment solutions. The majority of people were not aware of them at all. There was also a lack of trust in the solutions that existed. People doubted whether they were truly Islamic and said, there were many quotes of it's really just interest by another name and they didn't really understand it. And then higher fees and lack of affordability was the third problem which people were facing. I should add that of our survey, we surveyed over 1,000 participants from across the country. Over 90% of them desired Islamic solutions in some way. However, fewer than 25% were actually using them. So of the 75% that remained, this is the reasons why they weren't using those solutions. The number 2 finding, which is really, really interesting for us, was that younger Muslims in particular cared far more that their money was doing good in the world around them, rather than just ticking an arbitrary no interest box, which is really interesting to us because this had all the hallmarks of what we know as ethical finance, as opposed to Islamic finance in some way. And this is something that younger Muslims aged between 18 to 35 really, really sort of cared about. So this is how we solve those problems. Remember, we defined the problems as the how, the when, and the why. This is what we're doing with Kestrel. In terms of how people are going to save for their goals, we are really trying to take people on a personal financial journey where you should be budgeting before you're thinking of saving for short-term goals and investing for long-term goals. So when we're talking about budgeting, we take advantage of a permission in the UK called open banking. Open banking is a way of basically gaining access to people's banking information in whatever bank account they're using. So with Kestrel today, you can plug in your bank accounts from HSBC, Barclays, Monzo, whatever UK bank that you're using, view all of your transactions in a single place, so they're all consolidated within the Kestrel app, and you can actually set monthly budgets. Kestrel is able to determine what your monthly expenditure has been in the past, how much of it is essential spending, how much of it is non-essential, and where you can recognize savings to make sure you can save exactly what you're trying to save for that month. The second feature is the savings products, which we call the Kestrel eggs. Kestrel is the name of a bird, so we're trying to go with the bird puns with the eggs. These are basically savings goals where you can specifically say, okay, I want to save for a house. Let me set up a goal for that within Kestrel. And every month I can put in a direct debit of £100 into that little Kestrel account, or even bigger. You can also do quite innovative savings methodologies, such as round up savings, rounding up your spare change, spending £2.50 on a coffee, and then rounding it up to £3 and putting 50 pence into one of these pots and helping you to save that way. But the final thing that we're offering at Kestrel is our ethical marketplace. So this is a marketplace of all of the Sharia compliant investment products that exist in the UK, which people can view, compare, and purchase directly through the Kestrel app. We have a number of brands already signed up and many more which we're looking to come on board, including Minted, Cardus, Wahid, etc. So this is some of the traction that we've made in starting this up, and really when I was telling you earlier that in the UK it's quite easy to get the ball rolling quite quickly, I wasn't exaggerating. We started Kestrel about a year ago in November 2019 when Dying and I graduated from Cambridge. Since then, we formed our in-house tech team in Malaysia. We raised pre-seed capital. We got onto various accelerator programs. We launched our data science team, which is based in Oxford, and we launched the beta of our budgeting tool, which uses open banking, which I talked about with 500 test users, for launching our budgeting tool in September of this year for access on the App Store and Google Play. So that's what we've done. And we're also fundraising on Seeders, so anyone can invest in us at the moment. But where we're trying to go to is this. We've launched our budgeting tool. Next up is we're launching our ethical marketplace, which allows users to actually invest. In terms of the licenses, it's all about the investment management license with that, which you can either apply to the regulator directly in the UK for, or you can borrow it through a third party. In terms of the savings product, which is launching in February, again, that's an electronic money license, which we've talked about extensively already, before launching a full-fledged debit card in July, along with some further products and milestones on our roadmap. But I suppose the thing which I really wanted to bring up is, oh, sorry. I think my screen is frozen, but that's okay. So the thing I really wanted to bring up was some of the issues and the challenges which we have come across and what we've seen some of the others in the space come across as well. And there were two main challenges that we were experiencing. Number one, when it comes to expansion, what you'll find is many people think, okay, we'll launch in the UK and then we will look to, launch elsewhere in the world immediately. We are going to take the UK, then we're going to take all of Europe very quickly, and then move into Southeast Asia. However, something that we found is that Muslims in different countries are very, very different. They act very differently. So what we found was that they are quite a fickle demographic. Firstly, in the UK, oh, sorry, can everyone hear me okay? I'm seeing a few comments.
No, yes, we are okay with that.
Okay, you can all hear me. Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah, we can hear.
So,
we can see. Yeah, sure.
So great. So Muslims are quite a fickle demographic. And what I mean by that is they are quite skeptical and almost a little bit suspicious of any brands which are looking to target them based on their religion alone. That seems to be specifically for Islamic finance type products as well. I think it's because of some bad blood that has been generated in the industry by other Islamic finance institutions which have come before us, but that does seem to exist. A very good case study for this is actually Insha, which I talked about, which was the German one, which was backed by Al Baraka Turk. They launched in Germany, expecting a huge uptake from Turkish Muslims. And what they found there was actually that the Turkish Muslims had lived for so many generations, since back in the World War II, when many of their families moved in there and migrated. They'd lived there for generations without any concept of Islamic banking, and therefore they didn't really see the need for something like that. And the uptake was not huge. Secondly, German culture as a whole is quite cash. They're very attracted to cash, and they don't really like a digital or app-based banking model. So what we found is the Muslims there reacted very differently to the Muslims in the UK, which will be very different to Muslims in France, and etc. So expansion is something to think about for sure. Every Muslim in each country is a very different kind of demographic. Secondly, an interesting question is, do people really want a debit card? And this is kind of a very scary question, which many people do have to ask. But at Kestrel, we're not afraid of asking these questions. Something which digital banks in general are experiencing, not just Islamic digital banks, is that many people don't want to move their money into a digital bank. And the main reason for that is they don't feel that it's entirely safe there. So, there's big banks which have been around for hundreds of years, like HSBC and Barclays. People feel much safer putting their salary in that and not putting it into a digital bank. So when we ask people what is it that they want, they talk about budgeting, they talk about savings, they talk about investing. the debit card is almost a nice to have as opposed to the key thing that people really want. So sorry, I realize I'm a little bit out of time, Dr. Farouk, but I'll wrap up there. But that's
No
basically
problem.
the key challenges that
We
we
have
were
buffer,
facing.
so no problem.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, cool. So that basically covers what I was hoping to talk about in the meeting today. But yeah, thank you all very much for your time. And if you have any questions, I look forward to answering them in the Q&A. Or please do get in touch with me directly. I'll drop my details into the chat. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ari, for this wonderful presentation and also the insights from the industry and also from your work experience. I really do appreciate there are so many challenges and issues there because it's a very new and futuristic area. And I think that a lot of innovation and also some basic hurdles, also the cultural difference, the traditional and conventional issues are there, and you have to tackle all of them. So I think that I should move to my second presenter, which is my friend, Dr. Ashraf Iqbal. And I'm really thankful that he actually accepted my invitation to participate and contribute in this webinar. Currently, he is an independent non-executive director of Bank Pembanguan Malaysia Berhad and a member of HSBC Amana's Sharia Committee. He is also the founder of Mainspring Sendirian Berhad, an advisory firm specializing in business performance solutions focusing on knowledge-based organizations. In addition, he also provides mentoring to a number of technology startups. He was a founding board member of HSBC Amana. He has worked across a spectrum of roles, organizations, and geographies. Among others, he held various positions with the Shell in Malaysia, was the general manager of for human resources in Proton Berhad, and subsequently appointed as managing director for Proton in the UK and Europe. From managing businesses, Ashraf crossed into consulting and spent a number of years as a regional director for the Hay Group. Ashraf holds a PhD in Islamic banking and finance, a postgraduate diploma in Islamic studies, a master's in business administration, and a Bachelor of Science in mechanical engineering. So with that, I would like to welcome Ashraf. And Ashraf, the stage is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. I'll get the screen share going.
Yes, please.
Can you
Perfect.
Can you see that? Yeah.
Yes.
Are you seeing it in slide view or are you seeing it in?
I'm seeing it in slide view.
Okay, so the thumbnails at the side don't show up.
So yeah.
Okay, so that's good. All right.
I think yeah, it's okay.
It's fine. All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So because Arib took up so much time, I shall shorten my presentation. Thank you for that, Arib. And what I'm going to...
I'm very sorry, Dr. Ashraf.
Dr. Ashraf, I mean, is still okay because I think that we can manage that time. Even like our later Q&A session would be okay, no problem.
It's okay. So Arib's partner is listening in, so he will buy me a coffee in Malaysia as compensation for the loss of time. All right. So when I was given the topic by Dr. Farouk, he said, you know, the only reason that he's got me onto this is because Arib's the young guy and I'm the dinosaur. So he's just sort of said, we need a young guy and a dinosaur on the talk. So I'm the dinosaur. And I'll give you now the dinosaur questions that he gave me. So the questions that was asked were, is digital Islamic banking a real threat? Game plan of traditional Islamic banking, of the banking industry, whether to compete or to converge, and traditional Islamic banking industry, into the future. So those are the sort of three questions that he gave. And I thought hard about the questions, and actually, these are what the answers are. You know, it's quite straightforward. So, is digital Islamic banking a real threat? Yes. Game plan, compete or converge? My answer is neither. And traditional Islamic banking of the future is an oxymoron. So, what I'm going to do is go through and explain why I've given these answers to these questions. And I'm glad that Arif has actually set part of it up for me. So by the time I get to some of it, you're going to listen to what, reflect on what Arif said, and then you'll see why I've got these answers here. Not that I discussed this with Arif beforehand. Yeah. So I'm going to start with the question: is digital Islamic banking a real threat? I put yes, and if you notice, I've sort of what do you call this? Cancelled out the Islamic banking. Because the real threat is digital anything. What we've got to understand is actually the nature of capital, and capital from the time it was created has always had this nature of wanting to look for the highest returns. And the highest returns always comes with this constant improving of efficiency. So if you look at the history of human, we've just become efficient at everything we do. It just takes less time for us to do things. So for example, a lot of the white goods which we now take for granted, washing machine, dishwashers, all of that, was actually to improve efficiency, to free up the human to do more work for capital. Yeah. The problem with human beings is we place a natural limit to efficiency. That's the real problem. Humans are a limit, and the goal of technology actually is to displace or replace humans. So if you look back in history, the Industrial Revolution was where we used engines, steam to replace muscle power. So pre-industrial revolution, energy came from humans or animals, etc., and all that, and that was not very efficient compared to mechanical power, right? And then post-World War II, we saw a lot of automation coming in, and automation replaced the industrial worker. And you can imagine what a factory in the 1940s looked like versus a factory today. If you go to Russell Science in Germany and look at the factory, they make like, I don't know, 10,000, some whatever number of cars a day with like 20, 30 something workers. There are oil rigs out in the sea which have got no human beings on it. It's fully automated. And what digital does, it actually will replace the knowledge worker. And every time a worker gets replaced, efficiency goes up because you save on wages and you increase labor time. You know, a worker has to work 3 shifts. Digital works 24/7. It doesn't complain, right? So the new metric going forward is going to be profit per employee. If you want to see which industries are going to change the fastest before digital, watch this thing called profit per employee. And just watching profit per employee also will tell you how the change will be taking place. So on the side, there is a slide. If you can see it, right? If you look at there right on the top, financials, that's the financials there. Can I get a pointer here? The mouse, you know. So financials is generates the highest profit per employee, technology, energy, so forth, so forth. Right down here, you see food and drug stores. So these are convenience stores, your 7-Elevens. And if you just think about it, you can almost imagine what will happen to all these convenience stores because the human being will be replaced by vending machines. You know, so if you actually studied each of these bubbles, it will actually tell you the trajectory of change and probably what will it change into. And in all of it, you're going to see just the number of human beings getting less and less. So the next question. Game plan of traditional Islamic banking industry compete or converge? And I said neither. And I've made the traditional yellow and then sort of scratch out Islamic banking because again, it's not about Islamic banking, what's happening digital. This is actually just how traditional industry is going to get wiped out. So here are the reasons, right? We can't, and when I say we, I mean people like me. So imagine, I can almost, you know, if we took a poll of the people listening into this webinar right now, I'm going to guess most of you all are going to be like between 25 to 35 to 40 years old, right? So you're the sort of Gen X millennial sort of group. People like me are, sorry, you'll be millennials, and people like me are Gen X, and we're running all these traditional companies, and we can't compete because of psychographics. So the new consumers are going to be the Arabs of this world and the people that he is serving. And they will have no idea what traditional banking even looked like. So, my greatest excitement was getting a checkbook when I was old enough to. Arif won't even know what a checkbook is in his lifetime, right? So it's just going to change. And it's going to change in a way that we can't even imagine. And for us, sort of the dinosaurs, we can't converge either because of our minds. So it's very hard to make things which are old behave like the young or the new. It's very hard to make that happen, right? The old always wants to take the young and get them to behave like the old. It's very hard to go the other way around. That's just how it is. So I don't see it as competing or converging. What I see is going to happen is the traditional will need to do metamorphosis. It will have to actually just change its complete being. And you're going to see this over the next 30 years. In 30 years' time, people are going to say bank. And you're going to, what? What is that? What is this bank thing? We don't know what it is. And it's just going to disappear. And what form it will be something just different from whatever we think it is now. And then finally, traditional Islamic banking industry in the future, I wrote the oxymoron. Okay, so there's no such thing as traditional banking industry in the future. And here's the reason why. Number one, if we need to talk about Islam, we got to start with the Quran. And the Quran is future-proof. Before, current, and into the future. It's there. It is absolutely silent on Islamic banking. There's not a single time you open the Quran, you're going to find the word Islamic banking in it, but it's absolutely clear on matters of wealth, debt, loans, charity, contracts, societal obligations, personal responsibility, inheritance, redistribution, all of those things. It's very clear about how the affairs of society must be organized or needs to be organized in order to end up with just society. That's what the Quran gives us, the rules. And it says in there, truth is distinct from falsehood. And this comes after the bit where Allah tells us, La ikraha fid din. Let there no be compulsion in religion because truth is distinct from falsehood. Meaning you've got to use our own faculties to figure out what is true and what is falsehood. And our role of man is the Khalifah, vicegerent on earth. So when it comes back to Islamic banking, this is what I say about Islamic banking. We've got this problem of the twin peaks. We've got global wealth on one, global debt on one side, and it's just going up, right? So concentration of global debt into a very few people, concentration of global debt is across the masses because all global debt will get socialized. And the finance, whatever the finance which solves the problem of the twin peaks, that's what is going to be Islamic finance. I don't know what the solution is, but what I can almost guess is somebody's going to figure out how to use digital technology and solve this problem of the twin peaks. Hopefully it's Arif and Daing and the Kestrel group and all their friends who are working hard on this. So that's my view about traditional Islamic banking and the future. Whoever solves that problem, that's what Islamic banking is going to be. So Farouk, that's all I have prepared. I'm happy to wait on for the questions after this. Is this a good time for me to stop? A good place for me to stop?
I think that's really perfect and on time. Thank you so much for your insights, and I really appreciate your feedback. I think that I should move on to my last presenter, Ms. Sirin. But before that, I would like to make an announcement because first, Ms. Farah Jaffer, the CEO of LABUAN IVFC, was supposed to be on the panelist, but last minute she had some family emergency. Because of that, she had to pull out herself from this webinar. But fortunately, Ms. Sirin, she accepted to basically part of this webinar and contribute. She is also from LABUAN. So let me just introduce her. That Ms. Sirin is the research manager of LABUAN IBFC, a wholly owned subsidiary of LABUAN Financial Services Authority, the statutory regulatory authority for LABUAN International Business and Financial Center under the purview of the Ministry of Finance, Malaysia. Prior to joining LABUAN IBFC, She was attached to LABUAN FSA, Financial Services Authority, for more than 10 years and headed the business policy unit there. Prior hands-on experience as a regulator on policy formulation and international tax compliance. It has provided Serene a deeper understanding of financial solutions, as well as gave her a solid foundation in the promotion and market development initiatives of LABUAN IBFC. So I think that she also has a very strong regulatory background, and because of that, we would love to hear the regulatory perspective of Islamic digital banking or digital banking in general. So Serene, over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Farouk. So let me just share my screen. Is it clear on the screen?
Yes, we can see your presentation.
Okay, so I
Perfect.
think this is better. Okay, so yeah, good afternoon and thanks for organizing this webinar and really giving us the opportunities to share some of the developments on digital banking. And Farah really, she said sorry and apologies for couldn't make it to this webinar, really due to family emergency. Okay, so okay. So I'm just giving a little bit of the developments in the digital banking space. So digital banking has actually been there for a long time. So before this, people talks about like internet banking, and this is where you can perform your banking transactions via an online platform. However, when things develop, digital banking is now where all the banking services were provided via an applications without a physical branch. It's really all about data and informations. So it's relying heavily on big data, AI to improve the client experience or the customer experience. So the bank processes are now being automated. For an example, like that has been shared by Mr. Alif earlier. So you can apply for a loan via an apps, and really it is possible to know your application status within an hours. Everything is via a apps or an online platform, a digital platform. So even with the recent pandemic outbreak, this really pushed the needs for digital banking even further. Banks are closed and you have no choice to use the bank digital channels actually. So typically there are three types of interested prospect for digital banking that we can see. So number one, they are already a bank and believe that the future with less branches. So they will automate the processes with online client experience. So the other one is where you are not a bank and wanted to become a bank. For an example, Grab. Okay, they move into the banking system as they deal with lots of data and access to end clients. This can eventually create a better client experience based on the information or data they have. Third one is interesting, is really about partnership. So you can be a strong fintech provider and collaborate with a FI with corresponding banking line, and together they will then become a JV for a digital bank. So in a lot of instances, digital banking actually is to promote financial inclusion. So banking services will be cheaper due to cost efficiency with the support of technology. Innovation is really good to create different client experience, but this also exposed to more risk. All this will then need a strong regulation, especially for client protections on cyber securities, and hence robust supervisory framework is really critical for sure. So if you look at the slide on bullet 3, I'm not going to read through that. So these are some of the examples of the key developments on digital banking globally. Okay. So before I go into the regulations in LABUAN, so I just wanted to share a brief on the LABUAN, on the island itself. So LABUAN Island is part of Malaysia, located at east of Malaysia. LABUAN is one of the 3 federal territories under the federal government. So if you look at the right side, you can see the LABUAN, the island's economy was mainly driven by 5 key sectors, including LABUAN IBFC. So the whole island is duty-free, including the port, and we are the port itself, the LABUAN port is the port registry for Malaysian international ship registrations. Okay. If you look at the center, the jurisdiction LABUAN IBFC, We have been there for 30 years. Labuan IBFC was set up by the Malaysian government 30 years ago to intermediate the cross-border trades and investment in Asia. So majority, I think almost 70% of our players are Asian-based. Labuan, we always say we are cost-efficient, substance enabling mid-shore jurisdictions to create business substance. Why is it a mid-shore? Because we are part of Malaysia. We are also part of all the protocols the country adheres to. So this will include OECD, APG, and FATF. And we has never accepted barrel shares, and there is no cash transaction ever been carried out via our banking system. So, and the jurisdiction itself, we have own regulatory and supervisory framework, as well as our own tax rules. So the jurisdiction governing legislations were passed by the Malaysian Parliament and administered by a sole authority, Labuan Financial Services Authority. So although we have our own sets of laws and regulations, this is where really we are mid-shore. Labuan IBFC doesn't have this regulatory arbitrage, as the jurisdiction also subscribed to the Malaysia AML CFT requirements, so including international standards and best practices that the country adopted. Labuan IBFC businesses are predominantly wholesale international business. The jurisdiction is currency neutral, where the business dealing can be carried out in any currency of your choice. So this includes US dollar or even UAE dirham, that is possible. So I just want to share with you on the ethos of digital Labuan, a digital financial services operating in Labuan. So on digital finance, our ethos is that we are not taking sandboxing approach like some other jurisdiction that they offer. Instead, we are leveraging on the existing legacy licenses to facilitate digital players, meaning that you are actually operate in an actual market the moment you are licensed. Technology will be the underlying base that actually embedded into the business processes for the digital services. To us, digital banking is not really something new, it's just a new way of doing things. For an example, prior to this, when you want to perform a banking transaction, you will need to visit the nearest bank. But today, digital means that you can do your banking transaction via an app on your mobile device. So behind it, there will be an algorithm or the AI or the data that support for the banks to make decisions. Okay. Labuan IBFC has a ready digital toolbox. You can run a digital FI, say for example, digital bank, InsurTech, be a digital service providers or providing digital platform for trade or even payments. So all these are licensed and regulated by Labuan FSA. Our licenses are also possible to stack in order to create a more efficient business operations. I just want to share with you before I go into the comparison on the regulations with other jurisdictions. So I just want to share with you on the digital banking framework in Labuan. So the regulator has recently issued a guidance on the entry requirements for the digital banking applications 2 weeks ago. So there are 4 key areas that the regulator will be looking at when they are assessing the applications. A viable business plan, a sustainable strategy is utmost important, supported by capable and competent management that can run the business operation. Fit and proper internal governance and risk management, as well as AML policy cannot be compromised. This is the key that you have to have when you run a bank. So you are running a digital bank like a legacy traditional banks. Okay, a robust technology because it's digital. So the robustness of the technology platform will be also one of the areas that the regulator will be looking at. Okay. Here I'm just giving a very brief comparison. The focus will be in Asia. And of course, I have a column on UAE, Abu Dhabi. So as explained earlier, if you look at the first row, so Labuan IBFC is not taking a sandbox approach. So if you look at Singapore, Hong Kong, and Abu Dhabi, yes, they are taking a sandbox approach. So the moment you are licensed, you already operate in actual market. So what is actually a sandbox approach? So just let me give you an example. In Hong Kong, so a fintech supervisory sandbox was launched in 2016. The framework allows banks and their partnering technology firms to conduct a pilot trials on their fintech initiative. So this may only involve a limited numbers of participating customer or clients, And there's no need to achieve full compliance with the supervisory requirements. Instead, it is a progressive regulatory compliance. So on key assessment, generally all the jurisdictions are almost the same. We have discussed this earlier. Really, the regulator are looking at fit and properness, including financial soundness, a viable business plan to carry out the digital banking business, a robust technology support, and exit plan. Exit plan is needed because this is a new way of a new form of banking operations in case the business is not running as expected. Okay. So on eligibility, and as part of the economic substance requirements, most jurisdictions require at least a physical operational office as part of the economic substance requirements, meaning that the management and control must be in the jurisdiction. It is not expected that the bank will have bank branches to conduct the banking business because ultimately it's a digital banking operations. Really, everything will be done via a digital platform. But having said that, it is a question about what is the minimum substance requirements that the regulator is expecting. So in LABUAN, the regulator has actually issued a regulations on the minimum requirements. For digital bank, you need 3 full-time employees and an annual business spend of 200,000 ringgit Malaysia. So it's about equivalence to $50,000. So this eventually create better regulatory and tax certainty for the jurisdictions. So also, in addition to the presence in LABUAN, you can have co-located office anywhere in Malaysia. There are certain conditions for you to comply with prior to the establishment, but having said that, you can already have a marketing office anywhere in Malaysia once you are licensed. So I just give you a rough ideas on the numbers of operation, the license holder in LABUAN. For the first half 2020, LABUAN has licensed 3 digital banks, and we have approved a total of 46 digital services, financial services operator. So we have a complete digital ecosystem to support the digital business. Okay, a quick one on paid-up capital. Generally, digital bank will require higher paid-up capital. So as this is new form of banking operations, it is expected that there might be higher tendency for the business not to run as expected. So higher paid-up capital is imposed to ensure qualified and serious license holder. In Singapore, you can see there is a progressive paid-up capital requirements from 11 million as a start to 1.1 billion the moment you have your full digital banking license. This is because they are taking sandboxing approach. The Monetary Authority of Singapore needs the digital banks to prove themselves first, and once they are convinced with the management ability to properly manage the possible risk exposure, full license will be granted and the restriction will be lifted. And recently, I think last 2 weeks, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, they just recently announced, they just award 4 license holders for digital banking. So in LABUAN IBFC, as mentioned earlier, you can run a digital bank under the existing legacy licenses if you are already able to fulfill the licensing requirements. This is generally if you are already a FI. The new digital banking framework that I shared earlier that will allow qualified corporations to conduct banking business. Maybe you are not currently a FI, but is a qualified fintech service provider. You are still eligible to join LABUAN Fintech digital family under the new framework. Okay, in terms of paid-up capital, LABUAN is similar to Hong Kong, but again, on operational requirements, it may be more cost efficient to have your business substance in LABUAN. All administration expenses are paid in Ringgit Malaysia. For non-residents to reside in LABUAN or Malaysia, it is possible via expatriates visa. You can have your own bank's manager hired as a foreigner and reside in LABUAN or Malaysia. And this also includes the family dependents for the expatriates. Okay. Before I end, I just want to say that the competitive landscape for digital banking will continue to evolve. There is no denying that the digital banking innovations have made banking more accessible and comfortable. The question really now is whether the increased convenience can offset the possible risks that arise from the innovations. Regulations will definitely be needed to ensure a robust regulatory and supervisory framework. RegTech may be unavoidable in the future. I mean, regulators are looking at RegTech now, and FI, not just in Asia, but across the world, need to adapt and innovate to meet the rising demands. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay. Hi, I think it's that all for me.
Okay, thank you so much, Serene. It's a wonderful presentation and some insights from the regulatory perspective. I think that with this, we can start our Q&A session. We have a few questions lined up, and we will be
Dr.
accepting more as
Farooq,
well.
just I want to add something about this one, that in this era, what this Islamic banks and are going on, like now in Australia, they are launching a new Islamic digital bank, and in by next year, it will be the first Islamic bank in Australia. So there's a huge demand of Islamic digital bank nowadays. Even you know that Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, which is fourth largest global bank, Islamic bank, asset of 34 billion. They have reported that their 50% of their credit card was sold remotely as a customized sign up in their app. So these Islamic products, banking products, are going digitally. And now the Dubai Islamic Bank, they have, you know, you are very well aware of, you know, have launched this Robo Sharia advisor also. So this all the things there are, I think the disruptions is going on in Islamic banking ahead, you know, because of this COVID and this pandemic. So people, they are using these services. That's all I just want to add. Please go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I also add to this, as what Mr. Arif has shared earlier. Like what Mr. Arif has shared earlier, so open banking has really started in UK, and I think recently Bahrain also issued a guidance on open banking framework actually. So that is quite they are really forefront in terms of digital or even open banking in this space. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Farooq, to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Serene, for your feedback also, and thank you, Asif, for the comments. I think that I also agree with the huge demand of Islamic financial products in especially in the digitalized form. So let me just move to our question and answers, and then we can have some comments as well. So first question is to Arif, that out of UK, is Kestrel available in any other country?
I'm afraid at the moment we are only available within the UK, but inshallah we are looking to branch out quite quickly. Our next stop immediately is Malaysia, simply because we have a lot of talent from Malaysia, our entire tech team. Our co-founder Dayang is Malaysian himself and has worked within Islamic banking in Malaysia himself for a long time. But it seems, especially in the comments, we have a lot of demand from Pakistan. So who knows? Inshallah,
Yes.
we could take this.
By the way, Sareen is there. You can contact her from Malaysia.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
We will definitely be reaching out, Sareen. So thank you so much.
Sure.
Inshallah. So yeah, we may be looking at Pakistan as well, because it seems the demand is there. But it all depends on the licensing situation. As I say, right now we're operating on UK licenses. So it will be a entirely new regulatory regimes we'll be dealing with in other geographies.
Perfect. We have one question for Serene as well, that what about an investment platform? Does the regulator allow for equity-based Islamic financial instruments? If you know, like even like other than LABUAN as well, like if any in other jurisdiction, please share your knowledge, please. Yusuf.
Okay. Even there's the regulator around to equity base. So it's kind of like you are actually fundraising via an investment platform for Islamic instruments. Am I right? if I correctly understand. Yes, of course they are. So in the case of LABUAN, so when we shared everything, yeah, it's a conventional forms of digital businesses, all that, but we do have a legislation dedicated for Islamic finance. So we have a licensing act specifically for any Sharia compliance financial services, be it a traditional financial services, or you can do it in a digital form. That is fine. Yes. And of course, like, I'm not sure whether some other jurisdiction, and I believe they do have, there are also jurisdiction, maybe they will have a dedicated legislations for Islamic instruments to be raised, actually to be listed under an investment platform. I believe there will be, but I'm not too sure. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. To Arib again, we have one question that from the regulatory perspective in the UK, digital banks are approved and licensed already in the UK?
So there are some digital banks which have a full banking license within the UK. Monzo was one of the first to acquire theirs. Starling Bank, Revolut had theirs, but they lost theirs as well. So you do need to be careful about that. As I say, in terms of becoming a digital bank, there's sort of a light version and then a proper heavier version. The light version is with an electronic money license. That license allows you to provide your users with a debit card, and it allows you to store that money securely in a third-party bank, and they can access that money using the debit card. The thing it does not allow you to do is to basically act as a bank, which is where you are accessing your customers' money and loaning it out to as a mortgage or to other companies in order to generate profits or interest. So that's what you cannot do with an electronic money license. But there are digital banks which do have full banking license in the UK today. I will add that it's not easy to get them. It's very, very difficult. The capital requirements is very high at around 20 million pounds. And it takes a very, very long time to acquire them, about 2 years on average in the UK. So many people are looking at different routes. At Kestrel, we are considering other routes as well. Unless any investors are here in the crowd and would like to give us 20 million, but that's another story. Please reach out to me directly if that is the case.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then I think this question is again to Serene and Arif both. How are the AML and KYC issues handled at a digital bank? So I think from the compliance perspective and regulatory perspective, also Serene, you can shed some light on it, and Arif, you can also share your experience that how you are actually doing it.
Sure, Serene, do you want to go first?
Okay, so as I told you, AML and KYC has already been there, and especially for digital, you are still doing the same things actually. But of course, you will then, what we can see is like the client onboarding, they actually subscribe to these eKYC processes. Everything has actually embedded in their platforms and technology as part of their processes for client onboarding. So the same thing like the informations, eKYC on the ownership, on the directorship, the shareholding, the BO, ultimate beneficial owner, that cannot be skipped. So everything is the same, but now that people is actually embedded as part of their business operations for the client onboarding as part of the eKYC client onboarding. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Arif, over to you.
So exactly as Sri mentioned, one of the key benefits of digital banking is, especially when it comes to Islamic banking, is that customer onboarding, the process is very onerous and very difficult. In the UK, these can take sometimes a week, sometimes longer to actually set up a bank account, much longer if we're talking about applying for something like a mortgage. So long, in fact, that sometimes the house which you're taking the mortgage out for can be sold to someone else. And that has happened to many of our customers in the time taken. With what we're doing at Kestrel, it's something which all the digital banks are doing in the UK today. Very quick, seamless process. Can be done within 24 hours. The quickest you can get into the app is within 3 minutes. All you essentially do is you take a picture of your face, You take a picture of some sort of personal identification, whether it's a passport or a driving license, and then using AI, sometimes it can be done manually as well, with someone checking the similarities between the two. But very quickly, they can be given access to the app. And KYC is basically, that pain point has really shrunk down with digital banking. So it is a key differentiator between digital banking and conventional banks, which can be a very difficult process for customers.
Okay, perfect. I have another question that to Dr. Ashraf actually. So let's loop in him after a while. So that, do you think, Dr. Ashraf, that can Islamic fintech can accelerate the process of eradication of poverty?
That's a very, very difficult question. And it's not a question of where the technology, it's a question of the human mind. So if you have a mind around greed and
I think we lost Dr.
Sorry, Dr. Ashraf, we can't hear you. I think your connection is a little bit slow. It's lagging.
There's internet problem.
I think I will come back to Dr. Ashraf after a couple of minutes. But before that, Dr. Ashraf, are you back? Still, there's a problem. So I think that I will ask one question to Arib, and then I will come back to Dr. Ashraf again. So Arib, why Kestrel is not available in Pakistan?
Why? Big question. I suppose I'm here in the UK. So I suppose let me answer this in two ways. Firstly, when Daing and I set up Kestrel, we really felt like we were building a product for ourselves first and foremost. We are British. Well, I'm a British Muslim. I've been born here in the UK. I've lived without any concept of Islamic finance for the majority of my life, and it's only something which started to come into play in my adult life, where I saw Islamic banks and I wondered why they were so poor compared to some of the conventional banks which were out there. So first and foremost, it's a problem which I have. It's a problem which I understand, and it's something I'm trying to build for British Muslims. It certainly does have applications in other parts of the world. That's very clear. We're seeing huge response from people in the comments about that. However, I'll go back to something I said in my presentation, which was that the customer need of Muslims is very different in differing countries and different geographies. So a Muslim in the UK has very different requirements from a Muslim, say, in Pakistan when it comes to their financing. So when we, inshallah, do want to go and expand to other countries, Malaysia first, Pakistan in the future, inshallah, we need to do that very carefully. We'll need to assess exactly what the customer problem is in exactly the same level of detail as we have done in the UK, which alhamdulillah has been part of why we have been doing okay for the past year or so. But that is why we aren't in Pakistan at the moment. Also, another thing is regulation. We do need to see what the regulatory requirement is in Pakistan. I can't speak in great detail to them, but for example, the electronic money license, which we take advantage of in the UK, cannot simply be applied in Pakistan, and we'll need to work with them directly to do that. It may be that a better way of working in Pakistan is to partner with some of the big banks that have come before and take advantage of their licenses themselves. So, you know, it's a myriad of reasons as to why we're not. But first and foremost is because I'm in the UK and I need something which is helping me and the 1.9 million other adult British Muslims in the UK as well. But inshallah, very soon we want to go to Pakistan.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Arif. Going back to Dr. Ashraf again, I think, yeah, I can see him. So I think that I hope that the connection is fine and we would be able to hear him, inshallah. So the question was about eradication of poverty through Islamic fintech.
Yeah, can you hear me now, Farouk? Just give me a
Yes,
nod or something.
perfect.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So the issue of poverty has got nothing to do with technology. The issue of poverty has got to do with the human condition. It's got to do with the way regulations have been set up. So you can put in all of the fintech that you want. If the mind and attitude doesn't change with regards to the hoarding of wealth, to use the phrase from the Quran, we're not going to solve the problem. My fear is fintech is actually going to accelerate the tweet. It's going to accelerate it faster. So that's my view, Farouk.
Okay, perfect.
Dr. Farooq, I want to add something.
Yes, please.
This eradicating this poverty and everything. There are two things. One thing is digitalization, fintech. Fintech itself is bringing bringing the cost down. Okay, the transactional cost and everything. It is connecting direct, consumer to business, business to business, and it is removing the intermediary. So it will eventually reduce the cost, operational cost. One thing is, whether it is Islamic or non-Islamic. Then then we compare whether the Islamic banking and the conventional banking. If you compare, there are experts sitting over there. They can answer better than me that how is the difference between the Islamic banking and the conventional banking, whether it is helpful to the poor, their charges and other things like that. But for the time being, as a layman, I see that the Islamic banking and the conventional banking, they are charging eventually, the charges are same. And regarding the digitalization itself is reducing the cost, and it will help out to remove the poverty, and the poor people, the people like BitPesa in Kenya. Now it's an app which normal people and the businessmen are using, and it reducing the cost of doing business. That's all I want to add. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. I have another question for Dr. Ashraf. Is that how digital banking is going to solve the issues of global disbalance of wealth? Arib, I also want you to comment on this, but please, first, Dr. Ashraf, please go ahead.
I mean, I am, and all of them are going to put their minds to figure out how to do it. But for as long as the motivation is, how do I make money off people's money? It's not going to solve the problem. So Arif started very early on with that in his presentation, and I'll just give you a statistic, right? The global debt level today is $253 trillion. Global debt, right? Which is USD 32.5 thousand per living person. The rate of transference of wealth from interest payment is 7.59 trillion a year. That's what it is. It's a transfer of wealth, right? So, digital, not digital, for as long as the system in itself and the mindset in itself hasn't changed, it's very difficult. So I always remind people, there are more. We never ever talk about the issue of hoarding, right? The problem today is actually the hoarding of wealth. Without any technology, if people just decide, my job is not to hoard wealth, but to redistribute, actually the problem will be solved. So which is why I keep going back. I say it's a mindset. My fear is technology accelerates the problem, not solves the problem. That's my fear about technology, because it increases speed. My hope and optimism is, I said, people like Arib and all that, who are coming into this with a consciousness, a different level of consciousness, they're going to start chipping at it, and maybe in 30 years' time, we'll see some real change. Find me a country where Islamic banking has lowered income inequality. That's my challenge. Show me one, after 30 years, right? Where has Islamic banking actually lowered income inequality? That's the test. Okay, back to you.
Okay, perfect.
I can add a couple of things to that, to Dr. Ashraf's views. So I think firstly is an opinion held and something which was expressed by Dr. Dawood Vikri in a webinar which we held with him, is an esteemed industry player within this space in Malaysia, and has set up Islamic banks of his own in China. He said something very interesting, where he said it can be argued that it's actually un-Islamic to hoard wealth in any way, shape, or form, to hide money under the mattress, or to have money which is not doing work in the economy. So the idea of a bank actually lending out money to certain areas is actually inherently Islamic, as long as it's done in the right way, to the right businesses and places it's being loaned out to. And the actual way in which the debt is managed, not being something which is using interest, that could actually have serious benefits to the global economy. But I think something which I saw was touched upon in the Q&A, and I didn't have time to go into it in my presentation, was a really interesting idea which I first heard from Iqbal Khan, who of course founded HSBC Amana and is the current founder of Fajr Capital. And he explained the history of Islamic banking in the West, how it is today, and some of the issues with it. So Islamic banking is often criticized at the moment in the West as being not very different from conventional banking, in that it is still based on debt, and it seems very similar in its shape to actual interest. And some people often critique and say that it is simply interest by another name, which leads to this lack of trust in it by some people. Now, what Iqbal Khan actually explained was that 30 years ago, when people were looking at bringing Islamic banking to the West because it was sorely needed by all of the new immigrants or Muslims who were living in the UK and in Europe and in the US, they faced a choice. They could either bring in is the ideal form of Islamic banking, which is entirely equity based, where as opposed to it being debt based and actually based in loans. However, the regulation and the licensing was not ready in the West for that at the time. So they went for something which was meant originally to be more of like a stopgap, which was a more debt-based form of what we know as Islamic finance today. However, it was never meant to be the end solution. It was something that was meant to tide us all over until such a time where a more equity-based solution could be arrived at. Now, what I hope for is what we're doing at Kestrel and inshallah other fintechs out there, is we can actually move towards the true form of Islamic finance, which is a much more equity-based form of finance, similar to some of the certain Islamic home purchase products which have been theorized and are out there today. So that's all I wanted to add. I don't know if I explained that very well, but there is a more ideal form of Islamic finance that inshallah we can move towards.
Farooq, can I just chip in on that? Is that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So to that point, we've got to go back to what Dr. Yahya said of LARIBA, Dr. Yahya of LARIBA, right? He says we can't wait to change the world, or we can't wait to change the US Constitution before we start Islamic banking. So if you went to look at what they're doing in LARIBA, and price their housing loans based on real rental rates. Just that one small change has made such a big difference. So the question we've got to ask is, why is it that others don't have the courage to follow what he has done? So we don't have to change the world to do it. We just need the vision and the moral courage to make the change, to get back to what the Quran is asking us to do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I have another question for Dr. Ashraf again. That you said in during your presentation that Islamic banking is not in Quran. So can you elaborate on that? Because one of the question is that actually we no need to go by mere wording, because Islamic scholars have already given fatwas on Islamic banking and family takaful as they are in accordance with Islam. So how do you think that this statement is true when the Sharia scholars are attesting it as Sharia compliant?
Yeah, I have said this for the last 10 years. I wish we'd never call it Islamic banking. I wish we'd say banking Islamically. There's a big difference. If the moment you say Islamic banking, and if Islamic banking crashes, the rest of the world is going to say that's the problem with Islam. You see, so what we've done is we've put Islam hostage to an activity, right? And if you actually open the Quran, there is no Islamic banking. What the Quran gives is a set of principles of how to organize society. From there, the scholars, as what Arif had said, and the people, the pioneers, for example, have worked on, is to figure out how do we take conventional banking and de-ribarize it, take out the riba. That's what the scholars did starting from sort of the 60s into the 70s, right? Is that what the vision is? I don't think so. I think, as Arif said, it was an interim but what we've got to do now is say, okay, what's next now? And I think this is where you all come in. Saira Sif and yourself, your job is to go and open up people's minds to the what next, the ambition of what's the next step that we make, not stopping now and saying we've already got Islamic banking. So that's why I always say it's not in the Quran. Because imagine there's a global Islamic banking crisis. And with everything sitting on tawarruks, it is not hard to imagine that happening, right? What's the West going to say? They're going to say that's the problem with Islam. They're not going to say that's the problem with banking. They're going to say that's the problem with Islam. So that's where I'm coming from. And I always say that really because I want to provoke the discussion. So hopefully this was not overly provocative for this session.
Excellent. You have, defined everything like that. And I don't know whether other people will agree with me or no, or even Dr. Farooq, but I 100% agree with you. What has been done in the past for Islamic banking and everything like that, the next step has not been taken till now. What I foresee, being not very, very expert like you, all the people like that musharkas and other thing, still we are stuck up with only, de-liberalization these products and not going for specific products which you are talking about. Like one of the example is musharka, and in which we are stuck up with. Anyhow, sorry for interrupting, Dr. Farooq, please.
Okay, no problem. Perfect. I think that even I am quite critical about the current situation of and current practices of Islamic banking specifically, and also overall Islamic finance. Actually, theoretically, the idea is very beautiful. The concepts are very beautiful because, of course, they are derived from the Quranic verses and also from a hadith. The problem is like, how do you translating into the practice, and then how you see the dynamics changing around you. And I truly believe that digitalization and fintech is going to actually ease this situation and complex situation, because through technology, I can see that there are few hurdles and challenges which can be met easily, so that you can also improve the Sharia compliance of Islamic digital banking or even Islamic finance for that matter. So do we have another question that Islamic banking and takaful, for example, or overall Islamic finance is the ultimate future of economics globally due to its divine characteristics? Dr. Ashraf, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, the divine characteristics were in the Quran. They were in the Old Testament. They're in the New Testament. They were in the Torah. The question that we've got to ask is, how is it that all of these principles managed to break away? Whether it's from the Orthodox Church, whether it's from the Catholic Church, So we're talking. What we forget is the church. In the old Christian church, if you were a money lender, you could not even be buried in the Catholic consecrated grounds, right? So we look at it as if we think it's our battle. Actually, this battle has been going on for thousands of years. The question we have to ask is, how is it that every time riba manages to break free or get around? And I just wrote an article for CIFF in the Risalah. about how the battle between the church and riba. And we should go and look and see what is it that the scholars at that time did and the decisions to make that finally the church says, you know what, trade is like riba, it's okay, get on with it. You know, but that was a 700-year battle. We have only been in this for 50 years. Right, so I always say, let's see how it's going to go forward. So I think all the books have given us prescriptions. The question is why? You know, we've given the earth, we choose to destroy the earth. We, you know, think about everything that we do, right? We always move away from goodness. So Farouk, you're optimistic about what do you call this? Fintech. I may not share that optimism. You know, all right, back to you.
Okay. I mean, like, we do have our differences, and but I'm quite optimistic about how fintech phenomena is going deep into the cultural differences and also the conventional market. Perhaps let's see, inshallah, that what shape it will take. I do have one question from the regulatory perspective also, that is there legal cover provided by UK and Australia for Islamic financial products? I think that Arif can answer, and I will also ask this question to Sireen, that is there any legal cover provided by LABUAN for Islamic financial products?
So I'll go first, just quickly from the UK perspective. Nothing specifically for Islamic products. There is something called Financial Services Compensation Scheme, which protects people's deposits within any bank account for up to £85,000. So that is a protection by under the law of the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, which is applicable to any bank, regardless of whether it's Islamic or not. So again, you have to have a banking license for that to apply to you. An e-money or an electronic money license, that doesn't apply to you specifically. The other thing I would add is that a recent announcement has been that the Bank of England has decided to provide facilities for Islamic banks in the UK, whereby you can store money with the Bank of England and it will be in a ring-fenced Islamic account, which will not be loaned out to generate interest or towards activities which would be considered haram or non-Islamic. So that's a really groundbreaking announcement that was made literally last week, a couple of weeks ago, for something that's going to come into effect, and Kestrel hopes to take advantage of in 2021, inshallah. But that's really the only thing I can talk about specifically regarding legal cover or some sort of cover for Islamic accounts.
Sireen, would you like to add some LABUAN perspective here?
Yeah, sure. But sorry, I couldn't start my video, so I think it's okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it's just like the host has stopped my video apparently. So, okay, so in LABUAN, like what I have shared earlier, yeah, we do have a specific licensing act for Islamic financial services. We call it LABUAN, Islamic Financial Services and Securities Act. That is really the governing act for any Islamic financial services. So even the regulator themselves, they will issue a guidance note in specific to some Islamic transactions. So we do also have a Sharia advisory committee on board. So if there is any specific transactions or areas that we would like to have a Islamic or Sharia pronouncement, the regulator will do so and share with our committee, the Sharia advisory committee, to get a pronouncement from them actually. So really, yes, we do have the guidance for this, and we do have also a specific Islamic licensing act for Islamic financial services. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I would like to ask one question to Arif about Sharia compliance. So how Sharia compliance and governance framework has been implemented in digital banking?
So I can't speak for other digital Islamic banks, but I can talk about ourselves. We've taken a lot of inspiration from the way in which Sharia advisory boards are utilized by Malaysian Islamic banks. They're kind of some of the world leaders in terms of Sharia compliance and getting this Sharia advice, having that on the board. So we use a Sharia advisory service called Amana Advisors, which is run by Mufti Faraz Adam, who is almost used by, I think, almost every Islamic fintech in play today, at least in the West. So they act as our Sharia advisory board, which sits next to our board of directors and alongside our advisors as well. So they give us our Sharia certification as a company, and they also opine on different products that we're looking to put out, specifically stating whether this is Sharia compliant or not, and what should be done about it. So they can actually give their approval for that. But they act as our Sharia board. In the future, we're looking at reaching out to other scholars. We've got shortlisted a few of them that we're looking to come on and provide a bit more rigor and also a diversity of opinion to what we're doing. But that's what we're doing at the moment. Mufti Faraz is our Sharia advisor.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. There is one question. I think that all the panelists are welcome to answer this, that how can fintech assist in financing under different mode of financing like Murabaha, Istisna, Ijara to SMEs? Because actual differentiation is in financing, not actually in liability products.
There
Sure.
is a... sorry, Arif, go ahead.
No, Dr. Ashraf, please go.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Arif.
No, Dr. Ashraf, please go ahead.
You go
No
ahead.
problem.
You'll be far better. Far better than I am.
So if you all go to the Bank Negara Malaysia website, look for the 2016 financial stability report. In the case of Malaysia, it tells you how SMEs are starved of bank credit. So to give you an example, right, 3.3 billion of financing was approved for SMEs, 25.8 billion was rejected. So, and all the reasons are rejected is things like no documentation, etc., etc. So I think this is area where technology is going to make a huge difference. And the biggest difference, I think, that because right now, the only basis of credit assessment is how much money do you have in case you don't pay back. What will shift is looking at the psychological makeup of the SME owner. So I will look at Arif and actually find out what is Arif's propensity to honor his debt obligation to me, irrespective of whether he's got money or no money, right? So I think that technology is going to help a lot of that to change. So in that sense, those are my optimism parts of technology in terms of going forward. And I think the SMEs and all the alternative finance, the people who need alternative finance are going to benefit from this. Arif?
No.
Arif, would you like to add something?
There's little I can add to give a better answer than that, but I can also say that we are seeing more of these equity Murabaha type products already starting to emerge using technology today. There's a really interesting company called Primary Finance in the UK, which is an entirely equity-based form of home purchase product, whereby the company will look to purchase the majority of the house outright, funded by a number of investors, and then the person who moves into the house will pay both rent to those investors, and they'll also buy back a portion of their equity every single month with each of those payments. And that is something that would not have been possible without the type of crowdfunding technology that is enabled today and that we're allowing. And it's something that Kestrel is hoping to take advantage of with our own home purchase product that we're hoping to launch in the future as well. So, sorry, I don't remember exactly the original question, but I think that definitely technology can help us move towards a very different form of financing, which is not really found in the West, and is really more done through communities, which we see throughout other Muslim communities, and as opposed to on quite a large scale. So
okay.
Dr. Farooq, I just want to add something.
Yes,
that fintech, this technology is bringing closer to the Islamic mode of financing. The best example is crowdfunding, and like these kind of things which were not accessible, in which there is no interest charge, only services charges are there, and funding can be arranged easily on the mode of finance because it is done digitally and there is no bank or intermediaries are involved. So what I foresee is that the future of Islamic banking and Islamic finance using the technology is very bright. Things which cannot be done in a normal course of way can be done now easily because of this digitalization and this fintech technologies.
Okay, perfect. I have one question to Dr. Ashraf. That do you think that demonetization can help adopting fintech? I mean, can increase the adaptability of fintech and digitalization?
Would you like to define demonetization? Because we just had a long debate about this last week, I think, at INSEAD. So what's your definition first of demonetization?
I think then I have to ask the person who has asked this question, Osama Zulfikar. If you want, I can basically unmute you so that you can define what is your perspective on demonetization. Osama, would you like to?
Yeah. Hello, hi, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you very much. So my question is that, let's say if we have a very cash-rich transactions where the people, feel comfortable doing transactions through physical notes rather than the, through banks. So to ask them to move from the traditional way of banking to the digital banking, it might take some time. So if the government let's say try to ban or restrict large notes or demonetize large notes, whether it can help the new like the new banks who offers the digital banking to promote their products, it's possible.
All right, thank you for that. So now I understand what you mean by demonetization, which is actually taking currency out of circulation in your particular definition. Of course, if the central bank starts to pull out circulation, you're going to see an increase in digital banking. We just had a big discussion on this, I think, a couple of days back, and this is the question which I asked. What happens if the banks switch off the power? And don't laugh that this is a hypothetical question, because Gmail yesterday went out, right? So as much as we are running through all of this technology stuff, there are some real problems, look what happened in Argentina. The problem with demonetization is effectively you will give the government or a privateer absolute control of your money. So in Argentina, in the Argentinian crisis, the central bank just said, we're going to ration. Doesn't matter how much money. Right? So we've got to decide whether do we really want people deciding those sorts of things? In good times, it doesn't matter. In crisis, it happens. So we've seen it in Argentina. We saw it in Greece. So as much as we've got excitement about demonetization and all these things, let's also understand what the dark side of it looks like. Because if we don't manage the dark side, one day we're all going to get caught in it in very tragic ways. Go ahead, Farouk.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. There is one question to Arif that, okay, I think that that question has already been asked, sorry, my bad. It is about the Sharia compliance of the UK banks scheme under Islamic Sharia. So yeah, I think that you have already answered that. Okay, one question is, compared to conventional banking, how many opportunities does Islamic banks have to diversify their investments?
Sure, so I can go that. So I can take that. When you're looking at types of opportunities for Islamic banks to invest into, I will say that there's still quite a fair few. Most Islamic banks, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Ashraf, but they take the view of avoiding bad type activities, gambling, alcohol, explicit content, those kinds of things, which leaves quite a few types of opportunities still open. I think something which is a bit more contentious is whether investment or loaning opportunities to fossil fuel producing type companies, things which are actively damaging the earth, whether those should be considered Islamic as well. And the reason I say it's a bit contentious is because many Islamic countries often derive their wealth from things which can be quite damaging to the environment, such as fossil fuel and, Shell, those kinds of things. So I suppose if you want to apply that ethical lens as well as the Islamic lens, then the diversity of types of products becomes a lot less broad, and that can lead to some issues. But at the moment, Islamic banks still have quite a few of opportunities that they can look into. But please, Dr. Ashraf, correct me if I've misspoken.
No, you haven't misspoken. How do I? Oh, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, right? So there's a lot that we've got to do to sort out how banks use money. All the things, fossil fuels, all of that is true. It's correct. We've got to, there's a global environmental crisis. We need to solve it, undoubtedly. But let that not be a distraction for us away from what Islamic banking actually should be and should be delivering. Islamic banking, quote unquote. And that's my fear. We get so hung up or caught up with wanting to do, let's get off fossil fuels and all that, and actually not address the issue, the other societal problems, which Islam says is actually fundamental for you to deal. If you sit down and if you just sit down and say, for as long as we continue in the mode of financialization, the destruction will continue. Because in the financialization world, the price today is a discount of future income. And for that price to go up, future income has to go up, right? And the only way that future income has to go up today is you keep extracting even more and more and more and more. So it's just going to shift the sense. So there needs to be a real change in human consciousness about how we think about these things, as opposed to reallocation of money, which is helpful in a way. But we just got to start thinking very, very differently. Because the people who are holding the trillions of dollars still want a return on their trillions of dollars, right? In the real economy, I think 13.3 trillion was invested in the financial economy. So that gap is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So yeah, that's a bit complicated answer, but I suppose my call is let's not lose sight of the real problems we're trying to solve. And I know, Arif, you guys are going to do it. While I still got the opportunity, I know hopefully Serena is still listening in. Serena, are you still there, hopefully? Serena, I'm getting my LABUAN license effective 1st January. So I want to sit down and talk with Arif about what we can do to extend it to the digital license in LABUAN. Sounds like a plan, Arif? Serena's going to help us.
Yes.
Yeah, we definitely
yes, of course.
But I'm getting my license on the 1st of January in LABUAN.
Okay, sure, of course.
All right, Farooq. Sorry, Farooq. Since the regulator was there, I thought I should use the opportunity to grab her.
I think yeah, it's a good opportunity, no problem. So one quick question is, what is the difference between ethical finance and Islamic finance? I think although it's quite conceptual, but can you give me, Arif, a very quick answer to that? Why it is Kestrel is Islamic finance, not ethical finance, or it's both?
Well, the quick answer is that Islamic finance has been defined and ethical finance doesn't really have a definition. At the moment, ethical finance is anything that a company who says that they're allocating for ethical finance or they're allowing for it, anything that they define it as or want it to be. This is one of the biggest problems with ethical finance and where the term greenwashing has actually come from, in that there is no set standard that exists and currently that defines it. That is hopefully going to change. The EU is coming out with new regulations as to what should be defined as ethical versus unethical. But that is kind of, it's been a little bit of a wild west when it comes to ethical finance at the moment. Islamic finance has been pretty well defined at the moment. However, at Kestrel, what we are trying to do is we are trying to walk the fine line between those two things. Firstly, because it's what our users actually want. British Muslims, especially the younger demographics, and the majority of British Muslims are quite young, they really care about the effect that their money has on the world around them. They want their money to be doing good in the world. They don't want it to be impacting the world, producing carbon, increasing their carbon footprint in any way. So the more and more overlap we can find between ethical and Islamic finance, primarily the better for us here at Kestrel. However, as I alluded to earlier, when we are looking at the Venn diagram of his Islamic and his ethical, I think you'll find that the intersect between those two things does cut out a lot of things on either side, unfortunately. So that is something that we are working on and we require a bit more help for. Another thing which is interesting to look into is, of course, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I know there will be quite a few cool events which are coming out with some good friends of Kestrel, such as Samina Akram at Women in Islamic and Ethical Finance, where they're looking at the overlap between Islamic teachings and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations have put out. And it's something that we at Kestrel are very keen on developing for ourselves as a framework. So I hope that was an okay answer. I think it was Osama who asked that, but yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Farooq, just want to add something. Yes, in Islam, ethical is very well defined. And as a general rule, there is no ethical. Like you may be in Europe and America, spending money in, casinos, investment, it will not be an unethical. But it's just giving an example, in other part of the world, it will be unethical. So in Islam, ethical is very well defined. And as per the general rule, ethical can change from the culture to culture, from country to country.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. One question is, okay, imagine a financial transaction. So how it is structured makes it Islamic or conventional, right? Or non-Islamic. So how digitalization will help it in terms of, like, it's just a tool, it's not a product itself. So how do you see that digitalization of that product help improve its Islamicity or something like that?
It's an interesting question. Primarily, like I talked about, the main thing which is digital and what helps these business models is that it basically helps access at the moment to these products. It removes those kind of cumbersome barriers which are preventing people uptaking these products, such as poor KYC, things which can take a long time to actually onboard them onto a platform or get them onto a product. But I think the question was, how does digital actually improve the, did you say the Islamicity?
Sorry.
Don't worry. I think the question was, how does that actually improve the Islamicity of the product? I think, again, we did allude to that a little bit, in that I think the way forward could be for equity type crowdfunding products. That is something where I think digital or fintech can actually help us move towards what I think is the true form of Islamic finance, in these kind of more musharaka, murabaha type products, and facilitate those where it was very difficult to do so in the past.
Perfect. There is one question to Dr. Ashraf. Is that what is his views on what are his views on asset-backed prices? For example, oil price goes negative on 28th of April 2020 to 37. So although I'm not sure how it is related to the topic, but if you want to say something very quick, please do so.
My answer has consistently been in the Quran. It is Allah says it is He who gives rise to profit and loss. And we know the story of the 7 fat camels and the 7 fat cows and the 7 lean cows. So the nature of Islamic finance. As long as we stick onto the system of transferring risks, we'll never get to the essence of Islamic finance. And that's exactly what happened with the church. You put all of it together. So as part of it is, Allah has says that He will redistribute the wealth. Our job is to do all the stuff and all that, and He's put in systems that ensures wealth gets redistributed. Legislatively, so we've got the fara'id, right? Inheritance laws, etc., etc. But also in the ups and downs in economic cycles, in boom cycles. So that's why the story, the 7 fat cows and the 7 lean cows. That's just the reality of life. The test for us is, are we prepared to actually share in the risk, or do we want to keep onto a mode of just transferring out risk? And for as long as we keep transferring risk, we're never going to find an equitable position.
I think yes. The person who asked this question actually elaborated further that Islamic finance is asset based or asset backed. So what happens when asset price goes negative? So I mean, he was trying to pull out an example from the past that when oil and gas prices went down into negative even. So do you think that is that a threat, or is there something to worry about if we are talking about Islamic finance?
Yeah, so we can't just talk about asset back. We also got to say that Islam says don't speculate, right? So if you see if you start speculating asset back, not asset back, you again. So we've got to look at it in its totality. So I go back to Arif's example of the UK house finance, right? And if I take the La Riba example, so I'm not sure in the UK how they are calculating the rent, but in the La Riba example in California, the quote-unquote interest payment, the rent payment, is actually based on the aggregation of 6 rental quotations by estate agents of houses in that area, and they take the average and they say that's the rental you will pay me. But for as long as the rental charge is still based on the price of money, you haven't moved very far. You see, no? Now, so that's what I mean by taking you. So you look for your. It's a lot more than just a question of asset back or asset base. It's also a question of, as I said, are we speculating, or what is it that we're trying to do? But if you're invested in the real economy, you don't have to worry about this. You accept the ups with the downs and you go with it, because that's how Allah has planned it.
Perfect. So there is one question that how can we practically transform financial transaction of banks like Murabaha, Istasna, Salam, others, where one has to have physical or constructive deliveries of goods. However, as far as second leg is concerned, second leg of sale is concerned, sale and purchase is concerned, that is possible through fintech process. Is that possible? So the question is actually that, okay, we have, in Islamic finance, we have transactions going on the system, and then we have physical deliveries to be done for goods and commodities. So how digitalization can impact those things, and how those processes can be done in Islamic in digital formation.
Sorry, I'm not entirely sure I understand. I understand the question, Dr. Farid.
Okay.
Do you mind just repeating it one more time?
So, okay, the thing is, if let's suppose that there is a Murabaha transaction. So a Murabaha transaction can be done physically, because there is a commodity involved and there is an ownership transfer of that commodity. Let's suppose that we are talking about London Metal Exchange, and we are transferring a commodity from one party to another party, because we want to do a Murabaha transaction. So digitally, how it can be made more efficient, because there is a physical transfer of ownership involved in that transaction. And do you think that how you can tackle this issue in a Islamic digital bank?
Well, the one thing which is coming to mind at the moment is using a blockchain of some kind, something which allows the transfer of ownership rights seamlessly and in a safe manner, and allows you to actually track whether people are good players using an accurate KYC, which is meant to be untamperable, right? So a blockchain is something which could be used for this, and there are many countries which outside of the Islamic space are looking at doing this. I worked with the Swiss government in Zurich, who are looking at coming up with a digital exchange. I also did some work, but this is all back in my consulting days. I know Canada is looking at implementing this, the UK as well as America. But there's a very interesting company you should check out, which is based in Bahrain, I believe, although I might be wrong. But they're called Facet, Fasset, which is looking at doing exactly this. So they are a blockchain which actually is looking to fund different Islamic type products and allow people to buy ownership into these products and sell them through the distributed ledger that is the blockchain in that way. So blockchain is the immediate thing that pops into my head when I'm thinking of a concept like this. I will say that finding actual use cases which blockchain can apply to accurately is actually a mission in itself. So yeah, that's my take on it. All I can add, I'm afraid.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think that we have come to the end of our webinar, and I think that it's been great. But yes, of course, before that, I would like to.
Dr. Farooq, Mr.
Yes, yes,
Ashraf,
please.
yes,
Basically,
there is one question which I want to address, and I just saw the question. If you don't mind.
Okay. Yes, please.
Okay, and the question is from Aisha Jara. I don't have my glasses on, so it's a bit hard for me to read. But it's saying, my question is, how does Islamic Bank deal with delinquent loans? Okay. What I think I would like for all of obligation on people who borrow money, because we're always talking about the bank's bad behavior when loans go delinquent. We never talk about the obligation that you have when you actually take a loan. So before we start talking about those issues, let's all get educated. What does Allah expect of us when we actually go and borrow money, whether it's from a bank or whoever, and what are the obligations that come along with it? Sorry, Farooq, I just had to put that in because I think it's something that we don't talk about at all.
No. It's really a good point for me also that we are talking about Islamic banks, but we are not talking about Islamic customers. So there has to be some Sharia compliance of customers and clients as well. So yeah, I think that we have come to the conclusion, and I really would like now to invite all the panelists to share their last thoughts. So starting with Dr. Ashraf, I will go to Arib and then Sireen. If you have any final thoughts, please share now.
Well, I think thank you for having me here. I hope the comments I made were helpful. If there are things that people would like to clarify more, find me on LinkedIn and post your comments there. And inshallah, I will try to respond. Without that, wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Arif, do you have any final thoughts or?
Likewise, I think it's been a really rich discussion. Thank you so much, Dr. Farooq, for inviting me onto this with such key speakers such as Dr. Ashraf and Serena from LABUAN. It's been a really good time, and honestly has made me think about the way in which we are running our company. I think obviously there's a big demand from Pakistan that I'm seeing, so who knows, Kestrel could potentially look to go there sooner than expected. But otherwise, it's just been really good, and inshallah, really looking forward to the future. So yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. One question for you, although we are just finishing. Somebody has asked that what does Kestrel means, or is it like a typo?
Yeah. So Kestrel, I don't know if you can see over my shoulder, but Kestrel is actually a type of bird which exists here in the UK called a kestrel. It's a little falcon, which is quite commonly found here in the UK. The name actually started off as a joke because kestrels eat starlings, and Starling Bank is quite a big digital bank here in the UK. So the idea is that we were going after Starling. It started off as a joke, but we couldn't think of a better name, and people kind of quite liked the name. So that's where we stuck with it from. But also we didn't want something that was overly Islamic to actually put off some of the more skeptical Muslim customers, but also non-Muslims who can also benefit from our service. So that's that.
Okay, yeah. I think that before going that, you have to actually do the proper zabiha of Starling.
Who knows?
Anyway, Yeah. So, okay. So, Sireen, would you like to have any final thought, please?
Yeah, really thanks for inviting us for these sessions, and really we have a good sessions with all of the panelists, Dr. Ashraf, Arif, and then, yeah, if there's anything about the regulations, especially on LABUAN, feel free to connect, and then I will definitely try to clarify or answer anything that come to us, especially on LABUAN. Yeah.
Perfect. We have already got a lead for you from Dr. Ashraf. So I think that it's a good start, good
Thank you.
session, a fruitful one. So
Sure.
Asif, would you like to say something, please?
Yes, I would like to thank all my panelists, Dr. Ashraf, Arib, and Sareen, for coming to our webinars and supporting us to share the knowledge. And our aim at Alif Technologies is to share knowledge with the rest of the world, and hopefully we fulfill our commitment. That's all. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that there were some questions which haven't been answered. I think that if you, like Dr. Ashraf said, that if you would like to ask something, you can post on his LinkedIn, and I hope that our other panelists would not mind if our participants contact them and ask the questions regarding their presentation or their product or services. I think that will be great. I'm so sorry that due to time constraint, I'm not able to ask all those questions from the panelists. But I think that inshallah it will be okay. And in fact, like in our next webinars, we will try to accommodate other questions and participants as well. And new ideas will be coming up as well. So thank you so much to all my panelists and their time and their fruitful discussion, and also to the participants. Take care. Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bye.